The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, we have a lot to get to on today's episode, but we are hours away from Game 6 of the World Series. By the time you get this, you might be on your way to the party. You might be on your way to the bar to watch the game. Hey, maybe you've got enough money to go to the Rogers Center to watch the game yourself. We won't spend too long on it.
Maybe it's Saturday morning and you're hungover after the championship celebrations.
I would love that to be the reality. I believe the two other times the Jays have won a World Series, it was in a Game 6.
Correct.
So there's history is on their side, Siege.
But history doesn't play the games. You know, I'm conflicted because I know our 100%ers like consistency. And so we try to deliver you consistent entertainment, infotainment, whatever you call our show. But I've been saying all along it's Jays in 7. But now I'm in a really weird spot. Because when I was saying Jays in 7, I was kind of imagining them coming back from Dodger Stadium down 3-2, needing to win the Game 6 to get to Game 7, and then you flip the coin. Now I'm certainly not cheering against the Jays in Game 6, but I will say with Yamamoto pitching for the Dodgers, with the Dodgers season on the line, and you know, I think in some ways some of their key performers really have not shown well in this series, which is why they find themselves down. I'm still inclined to say Jays in 7. I feel like it's always been Jays in 7. So I hope I'm wrong. I'm not trying to will that or manifest that or anything, but I want to be consistent. I want to be honest with our audience. And I've been saying Jays in 7, so I'm sticking to Jays in 7. What say you?
I think they're going to do it. And look, I get it. Maybe Saturday morning I'll listen back to this podcast and they'll be like, "Nah, you dummy, you should have said Jays in 7." But I'm thoroughly impressed. I'm not surprised, but thoroughly impressed at how the Jays have responded to challenge after challenge as this series has gone on. I'm sure you stayed up as long as you could too, but I watched that 18-inning marathon up until 3 a.m. And the fact that they were able to respond with victory after victory to put themselves in a position to win the series at home, like you have to give it up to this entire team. And Trey Savage, a pitching performance of all time with what he did in Game 5. Absolute amazing stuff.
Well, I haven't missed a pitch in the series, so I definitely was up too. But the challenging part for me is I was flying to LA the next morning for Game 4.
How was that experience, man?
It was incredible. But that would talk about a strange week. Like when you make that plan and you're definitely not planning on the game ending at nearly 3 a.m. where you are. I had a 5 a.m. alarm to get up to go to the airport. So it was like a 2-hour nap in my bed. Obviously slept a little bit on the flight. I went to the game Tuesday. Was just an unreal experience to be at Dodger Stadium. Ohtani on the bump. Obviously the Jays had a huge bounce back. I mean, I got to be honest. The vibes were not particularly high off of 2 hours sleep after watching them lose in 18 innings. I was thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm going out to LA to watch this, something bad happen. But, they came through with that win, and then I came right back first thing the next morning because I didn't want to miss Game 5. So I landed in time to get home for Game 5 and watch that Savage gem you're talking about from my couch again. So this is a YOLO time. You can probably get that feeling. This is like I'm not counting on this happening again in my lifetime. Obviously, I hope it does. I hope you can see the makings, frankly, of a Jays team that should be good for a period of time. But as we know, no guarantees in sports, no guarantees in life. So, I went the distance to see one of those games in person while watching the other two in their entirety from my couch.
Dude, that is such an epic thing to do. I just want to say that is so, like, when you told us you were going to do that in the chat, I was like, you got to be kidding me. But like, that is damn cool that you were able to see a World Series game in person. You flew across the country and you came back. Did you like solo trip that? Was that all just you?
That was solo. Yeah, I went to the game with
that is crazy.
I went to the game with a friend who had the ticket and offered me the chance to go if I got there, which is frankly what made it all happen. He actually reached out to me before Game 7 of the ALCS, and he's like, "Just so you know, there's a ticket with your name on it, on next Tuesday if the Jays get through." And then I was like, sure. I mean, why, like, who can say no to that? I mean, obviously it's a long way to go, but I got flight points and things from over the years. It was really it was a lot of, it was awesome. There was an amazing number of Jays fans there. I have to say, quite a number. and it was a little edgy in Dodger Stadium. Like I was like a little surprised at, you expect some chirping if you're wearing the other team's gear. Like I do get that, but like it was a little unwelcome, I would say, in the early parts of that game. And actually there was one guy in particular in our section who was kind of being a bit of a jerk. And by the end of the night, you know, it was a 6-1 game, actually 6-2 in the end. But anyway, it was by the end, he actually turned around and shook hands and was like, you know, I hope you enjoyed your first trip here. But at the start of the night, he was not making us feel at home in his park, which is all good. Anyway, that's part of the experience. It was awesome. And it was cool after the game. You know, we walked down Sunset, found a local establishment, just saw all the Jays fans out. It was, you know, the Jays Nation travels really, really well, and they have fans right across the country and around the world, obviously. And so, yeah, it was a pretty unique experience. Actually, I didn't even mention this on my flight down. When we landed, the pilot like said a few words about the Jays and then put on the OK Blue Jays song as we were deboarding the plane. So, I mean, and definitely you could tell I was not the only one doing that. Like what I just described, like a lot of people looked bleary eyed who had stayed up for the Game 3 marathon and were just at the airport first thing in the morning flying to LA. So, yeah, I'm never going to forget, no matter what happens this weekend. I'll say this. I'm never going to forget this run my life. I think the Jays are the most lovable team I've ever cheered for in any sport. I actually believe that. I think that this particular version of this team, like there's no criticism coming their way. If somehow they lose game 6 and 7, which I'm not predicting, obviously, but there is no criticism coming their way. Like these guys outperformed every expectation. They've repeatedly got up in big moments, you know, even coming back and winning that game 4, coming off the disappointment of that loss. Then, you know, you Savage, who's now started more games in the MLB postseason than he started at AAA. Like what? To have that outing. I mean, this team is bananas. I really do believe they're going to get it done in one of these next 2 games, but if they don't, no complaints. Like what a year, what a run, and to taken me on a thrill ride. I'm just grateful to have lived through it.
I appreciate the optimism. This team has taken an entire baseball nation on a ride, and I'm looking forward to our next episode where we will break down in totality however this World Series shakes out. I think it'll end in 6. If it goes to 7, all the better. I mean, what else were you going to do on a Saturday night? I guess beyond watch hockey, I guess the teams that we cover anyway.
And it should be noted all this happened, Julian, because of our 100%ers. I know a few of them are probably yelling at their phones right now listening to this. This did come after a year where I was boycotting the Jays. So yes, I'm owning that. I'm such an irrational fan. I love that team so much that my love drove me to a dark place with them. And I had to come back around. Fortunately, late August, I got back in. Which is great because it actually would have been a regret, I would say, if I didn't get back emotionally invested in the team. Not just because I had the experience to go to a game. I mean, all that stuff's amazing, but to actually, you know, see this thing through, pretty crazy. I'm back either way, as I say, no matter what happens. I've already bought a stupid amount of tickets for next season. Like I'm overcorrecting for the lost first few months of this season.
You're forgiven for.
Well, I don't need to be forgiven. It's like love can be complicated. Like if anyone's been through a relationship, maybe you're on again, off again with someone, but like love can take you to dark places. And my love for the Blue Jays took me to a dark place last offseason specifically. But I'm back. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. I'm re-energized. These guys, they won me back, man. They won me back.
Every time you were trying to leave, something kept pulling you back.
Oh, I never. But I was real. I definitely didn't watch the first half of the season. So anyway.
But hey, anyway.
They started melting me in the summer, and then by the fall, it's just crystallized back into.
Too good. It was too good.
We've rediscovered, you know, I want to play some like romantic music now, although we'll be in violation probably. So.
We could get like
Let's
a generic
get it on. Me and the Jays.
Whoa. Of all people to threaten a lawsuit, I do not want Marvin Gaye on any of that. That's the last guy I want on any lawsuit with us. You see what he did to Pharrell and them?
Yeah.
I don't want that. Yes, next week we will talk more about the Blue Jays. And I say forgiven because I did say in the chat that I think the Jays are going to do this. And I got bullied by you and Jesse for supporting for supporting your team. So
it was weird. I don't even know where that came from. Jesse just took issue with you liking the Jays, and then I just
Why do we have a non-Jays fan in the chat? I'm happy for my friends.
Yeah, that's true. And you're happy for Vlad.
Yes.
Vlad is having his star turn times 10 this postseason.
Man, I can't wait to see him win MVP for this series, man.
Yeah, he'll probably get it. I actually haven't put any thought into that, but like he's had some other key performers, but he's been there the whole time. He's like even he had the game winning homer, I guess, in game 5. I didn't think of it that way, but that was the run that won the game. Obviously the big blast in game 4. I mean, he's done it all. Right. He's got the keys to the city. Again, win or lose. He's
signed long term. He's got keys for a decade plus to come.
And he called his shot. Set. That's what I love. He's been talking about it.
Clearly, baseball in the brain for both of us. Again, next week we'll talk more about what happened. In the meantime, let's get to some hockey news, CJ. Let's talk about some contracts. Marty Necas signs long term. Thomas Harley signing long term. Logan Cooley signing the third largest contract coming out of an entry-level deal. He's getting $80 million. I mean, there's a lot of money being doled around. I want to start with Marty, though, because we know about his part of the saga, which is, of course, a big point from the Mikko Rantanen saga we followed last season. The fact that Colorado signs him 8 years with an $11.5 million AAV. I'd love to know your thoughts on the deal. And how much of Mikko and the contract negotiations were you thinking of with him when this Marty Necas deal was announced?
Will you hear this sound, Julian?
I don't hear anything.
That's a moment of silence for the 2026 UFA class because it's been eviscerated these last few weeks. And the one guy I might have thought had a chance to play out the year and maybe, go to market was Marty Necas. Obviously didn't even end up getting close. I mean, he's had a really nice start there with the Avalanche this season, and the stakes are pretty high. That's a team that's built to win today. It's one that wants to win next year and the year after and the year after. They've got a big contract to give to Cale Makar as soon as this summer coming up. So he was an important piece of business. And the one thing I will say is, if you look at the common denominator between all the recent signings that were pending UFAs, other than Connor McDavid, who was kind of, for lots of reasons that we've been over, on his own, he's viewing things differently. Every one of them signed an 8-year deal because that's not going to be allowed for too much longer because of changes to the CBA. And that's a lot of guaranteed money. And so for Martin Necas to get to $11.5 million on an 8-year deal, that's $92 million guaranteed. If he had have waited to July 1st, he could only sign 7 years somewhere else. He would have had to get 13 plus to get the same $92 million on a 7-year contract. For UFAs in 2027 on July 1st, they're only going to be able to get 6-year deals when they go somewhere else and don't stay with the team they're with. So right now, the time is ripe to extend players over 8 years. And that's, you're seeing it as a common denominator. I'm sure we're going to get to a couple other 8-year deals that were signed this week as well.
Yes.
And so for Necas, I mean, look, when the Avalanche made the set of decisions that led to them trading Rantanen and getting Necas, they weren't thinking that this is what he'd be paid on his next deal. But that's not a shot at Martin Necas. It's just, obviously, we've seen the market shift, in a dramatic way upwards for top point producing offensive players, of which I think there's every reason to think Necas will continue to be. I mean, he's playing with the right guys. I think he really fits in well with the Avalanche's system. And, rather than tempt fate or wait it out and maybe see the number go higher or risk losing him, the Avs stepped up big time this week, and that's what got the contract done. Is Necas was pretty intent on hitting a number. The Avs weren't getting to 11 million or even above it until a couple days ago, and once they got to 11.5, I mean, it was a quick yes, and they got the deal done, and he's there for what could be the remainder of his career, depending on how things go. So, big home run for him, and yet another win, I would say, for an offensively gifted player in the NHL. Just when you look at where the market was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago to where it is today, I mean, these guys are going to get paid. Talent is going to get paid, and I think that's rightly so.
For sure. And Marty Necas deserves that money, and he's off to a great start this year. But if $11.5 million for Necas is the price point, shouldn't they have just kept Rantanen, who probably would have cost maybe just like $1 million more? Like, I can't help but just think of the fact that they were in this situation with this big money player, and then this entire saga goes on after that. And yeah, they got to sign Marty Necas. They can't let that guy leave for nothing after all of this. But I don't know. I can't help but think of what they had. It's fair. And you're not the first person to think that, I'm sure. Like, I bet there's diehard Avalanche fans out there that even if they love Necas, they just would rather see Big 96 back with the team because they had so much success with him. And obviously he loved it in Denver. And, this is why it's hard to do the general manager's job. Is we sit here and Monday morning quarterback, as we say, and they have to make decisions. And, we get the benefit of hindsight when we analyze situations. Things really broke down with Rantanen and the Avalanche last year. They were trying to get a deal done. I think that there was not a very good spirit of negotiation in those talks. I think that there was, some emotion creeping in and the Avalanche obviously doubted their ability to eventually retain Rantanen. Now, Rantanen has since said, and I have no reason to doubt him, that he wanted to stay. Like, that it wasn't, that he felt it was a negotiation that was going to lead to a deal eventually. And sometimes negotiations take time. Sometimes there is some emotion. Sometimes, you get a little offended by an offer, or you think someone's being unreasonable with an offer. But obviously, the Avalanche, they got to a point with him where they just felt like they had to move him. And definitely with the benefit of hindsight, I think if they could have signed Mikko Rantanen at 12 or even 12 and a half on an 8-year deal, you might take that over Necas on an 8-year deal at this point. Certainly, if you look at playoff production, is a great place to start when you talk about paying someone like Mikko Rantanen. You feel pretty good about that. And that includes last year's playoffs after they traded him, as the Avalanche saw firsthand with a hat trick in Game 7 for the Dallas Stars. But, at the same time, if you made that Rantanen decision and you can't go back and change it, you can only operate with the circumstances you have today. Those circumstances led them to signing Necas. So, those players will forever kind of be tied. I definitely think there's going to be a what if, maybe for the player. We'll see how things go in Dallas. I mean, look, he's landed in a great spot with a great team. He's got a nice deal, in a tax-free state. His 12 million times 8 looks pretty good when you're not even paying state taxes on it. So I don't know that there's any regret from his end of things. And we'll see where the Avalanche go. But, it is it's one of those strange ones. That trade was not something we've ever seen. The fact he then gets flipped again before the deadline, like the whole set of, really from the first moment that trade went down in January where he was traded to Carolina initially to where we are today, that doesn't follow a typical storyline for a star level NHL player. We don't see that too often. And this kind of puts the book on it in the sense that there's no contractual decisions, but now we see what, how these guys perform and if they live up to their deals, if the teams have the success they hope. And, for the Avalanche, I think that they help keep themselves in a more competitive window by having this player signed. I just don't think they could risk losing him for nothing because, you look around the league right now, and we're going to get to this later with some of the teams that are on the rise. I mean, there's just not enough good players to go around, right? And when you have these guys, I think there's a huge pressure to keep them. And right now that pressure is seeing them get paid more. And that's, it's a good spot to be in. Marty Necas had the right year to hit UFA because he would definitely not have got this deal a year ago. And, from anyone, but this is a new reality and players like him are benefiting from it. What do you think your free agent frenzy broadcast will look like on July 1st, 2026?
Just a big, long moment of silence. Maybe we're going to be playing a replay of the Jays winning the World Series just for the vibes or something. Because it does not set up very well. And quite honestly, I think more players are going to sign for kind of the reasons the guys have already signed. Like, who's even the top name at this point?
This is bad on my part. I could not tell you off top of my head who the hottest name would be.
Nick Schmaltz, maybe? Like, I'm not being a smart ass, but he's had a really nice start in Utah.
He's played really well to start the year.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not kidding. Like, it's, even the look at the goaltending market has been decimated. Like, Jacob Markstrom. Panarin, yeah, but he's not bathing himself in glory to start this year. And he's getting up there. Like, obviously he's a name but he's 33, 34. You got Jacob Markstrom, but I expect him to extend in New Jersey. I honestly, it might be the weakest July 1st class that I can ever remember by the time we get there. The thing I will say, though, as a result of that, maybe we see more trades. Like, it might actually, even though it doesn't end up being what we're used to, it doesn't mean it won't be compelling in its own right. But yeah, right now, I always want to give you a reason to watch and tune in, but right now it's not looking too promising for that 2026 free agent day.
All right. Well, hopefully something will happen. Maybe James Duthie will do a dramatic reading of his latest Beauties book. Maybe that'll help.
I would take it. I haven't read it yet, but I'm sure it's great.
Yeah, I'm waiting on my copy. Anyway, what did you think of the deal for Thomas Harley? 8 years, $10.587 million. Very handsome deal for a very useful defenseman out of Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, useful is probably understating.
That's underselling
it, right? Yeah,
yes.
he's really emerged is the point, right? Like, if you go back to the Four Nations tournament when Canada ran into some injuries there, and I remember reporting on him being the name as the guy that was flying in. Like, a lot of people were like, who, what? Like, even a year ago, he did not have a ton of profile league wide. Now, the Stars obviously liked the player for some time, but and then you couple the fact that Miro Heiskanen ended up injured last season, and Harley had to be thrust into, a role higher up in the lineup, carrying more responsibility. And that team didn't miss a beat. They were able to play and, get all the way to the conference final. I know Heiskanen did eventually return later on in the spring. But he's emerged as perhaps their best defenseman, or certainly in the conversation with Heiskanen, which is a great thing for Dallas. But, now they have to pay him. And, you're starting to see the Stars, they're doing what most teams want to do. They're getting to the golden age of a few of the players that have driven their success. You've got now Jamie Benn on the 1 year deal with all the bonuses, but not a huge, amount of money tied to that deal. Tyler Seguin celebrated his 1,000th game this week, but he's getting towards the end of his contract, and you're seeing the big money now get rolled into the next generation that should have Dallas be poised to be really good for a long time. And so I don't think they had much choice but to try to do everything they could to get Harley signed. I'll say right now, we're not picking Team Canada yet, but I would be shocked if he's not part of, the team that's going to Milan with Team Canada come the Olympics in February. And he's just a huge piece for the Stars to have locked in. And so, you look at the deals they've done with Wyatt Johnson, obviously Rantanen. The next big decision will be Jason Robertson. What happens there? But the Stars are poised to be. They have the tent poles in place to be a contender for the time being, and Harley's a huge part of that because he's just developed into that kind of guy, and nice for him too. He did a bridge deal, right? A second deal. This wasn't straight out of entry level, but he just hit one into the upper deck from the player's perspective after playing out that bridge deal this season.
Hitting one into the upper deck. We still have clearly not switched off baseball brain.
No. I mean, that's probably not. I will in November. I promise. I'll be back to more hockey. But right now we got to live the moment we're in, man. I always try to remind myself, like, be where your feet are. Well, where are our feet right now? I mean, this is still, we both live in Canada. This is a huge story for our country. So we're blending the national pastime with the current fixation on the Blue Jays.
This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Hockey is back, and this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, brings you all the speed, skill, and nonstop action you love. DraftKings Sportsbook delivers the unmatched intensity of the NHL right to your fingertips. From player props to the thrill of live in-game betting, every drop of the puck is your shot to win big. A bunch of games going on Saturday. The Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators playing each other at the Bell Center. Canadiens are the favorites at -130. Toronto and Philadelphia playing each other in Philadelphia. The Leafs are favorites at -125. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. DraftKings Sportsbook is the place for the NHL and so many other leagues around pro sports. They're the spot to bet. Light the lamp all season long with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code SDPN. That's code SDPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets in your bet wins. in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 8887-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved. Let's continue to remain in the Central Division where our feet have actually been and get to the Utah Mammoth and Logan Cooley with this big money contract for him. 8 years, $80 million for Logan Cooley. What do you think of how he's gone about the start of his career and the money that he just signed?
Well, I mean, it's a tremendous deal for him. This is the third largest contract coming out of entry level in NHL history. So, he's putting himself in the kind of realm that, Connor McDavid was signing on his second deal, or Austin Matthews with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, Logan Cooley hasn't achieved, quite to the level those guys have in his first few NHL seasons, but he's clearly trending in an upwards trajectory. And I think for him too, like he talked about it after signing the deal. This was weighing on his mind a little bit, and he did have a bit of a slow start initially to this season. He's heated up of late here, and I don't think there's a coincidence between this offer being tabled in that period of time and them, working on some of the finer points of how it would break down and ultimately announcing it this week. But Cooley turned down a pretty big offer before this. And we sort of discussed this, I think, when Lane Hudson was in the same spot with the Montreal Canadiens. Like, it's one thing to turn down a big offer because you believe you're worth more. I mean, that's totally fair. But it's a lot of money to leave on the table. And then you play 2 or 3 games and you don't have a point. Maybe you're not yourself on the ice and you start to be like, oh, did I make a mistake? Like it's really easy to sit here and imagine this, in terms of like math. But like, it's not just, there's human emotions with all these decisions. And, I thought it was nice. Emily Kaplan wrote a really good story at ESPN, if you didn't get a chance to see it, on how the Cooley deal came together. And she quoted Ryan Smith, the Utah, owner, saying that he had to call a meeting at one point, and he basically said to Logan, like, congrats, man, you've made it. Like, no matter what happens now, yeah, we might still argue over a bit of money here or go haggle over a bit of money. But he's like, you're 21 years old, your family bet on you. Everyone had to make a lot of sacrifices to get you here. Like, you got an $80 million offer. Like, you won. Like, this is what it looks like. And Ryan had said in one of the quotes in Emily's piece, just like, he's seen a lot of athletes get to that moment and not almost be happy about it. And he wanted to hammer that home with Logan. And I think, this team in Utah, we're starting to see like they're for real. And, a player like Logan Cooley, this is the counterpoint to when I sometimes rail against everyone going into a rebuild is, right. Cooley's a guy that Arizona drafted, but this organization brought into the fold, with a pretty high pick. And, this is how you turn things around when you've been lost at sea or lost in the desert, as the former Coyotes once were. So, really gifted offensive player. And I think it signals a new market, really, because what's coming next, Julian? Connor Bedard needs another deal, right? His entry-level contract expires after this season. I don't think anything's imminent there, but I see this Cooley deal as a floor for what you're talking about on Connor Bedard's next contract. And Leo Carlsson in Anaheim, same spot. He's playing out his entry level. Adam Fantilli in Columbus. All these players are, I think we're starting to see like the step ladder is going up. And, for some of them, like I think if you're a Carlsson or a Bedard, there's no rush to get anything done. Like why even fuss about that, right? I mean, you might as well just play out this season and see where your numbers end up. I think it's more than likely that all those guys are going to have higher point totals in their third seasons than they did in the first two. And, it's also a time where the prevailing winds are shifting. And I should mention, because I sort of paid reference to it, you have to sign to get an 8-year deal. You have to sign by September 15th That is the start of training camp in 2026. So that clock is basically ticking for any reasonably high end player that's signing now, where teams can basically extend them the max deals till that time. Obviously that time more than covers, when we're going to see new contracts for Bedard and Fantilli, and Karlsson as well. But, Logan Cooley puts a nice number on the board for all the agents for those players. And, but it's a new era in the NHL, my friend. That's what all these contracts tell me. They're not apples to apples comparisons with each other, but they all point in one direction, and it's a good one if you're banking for one of the players.
85, 90, 95. How much higher are we talking for a potential new contract for Connor Bedard? Let's just spitball for a second.
Well, here's the thing. I think that one will come down to term, because it's not a foregone conclusion he'll sign 8 years. I'm sure the Blackhawks will want that. But his side might want a 5-year deal, right? And we've seen precedent for that. Austin Matthews' second NHL contract was a 5-year deal. Mitch Marner's second contract was a 6-year deal. John Tavares' way back in the day, he did a 6-year deal as his second deal. Steven Stamkos' second contract way back in the day was also a 5-year deal. So, we've seen, when we're talking about trends shifting, as soon as the league put in that limit where you can sign up to 8 years with your team or 7 with another team, 8 years became a magnet. Almost everybody who could push for the most number of years, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision. And maybe now, when the term limits are being reduced, maybe agents are going to be like, you know what? We don't mind, because there's more money still on the table. So maybe Connor Bedard is looking for north of that 10 million, but he wants it on a 5 or 6 year contract. And so it's hard to say right now, because I don't get the sense in either his case or Karlsson's case that there's much negotiating going on. I think there's been some discussion of parameters and how things might look and that nature, but don't get the feeling there's not like active negotiations. And let's face it, I think a lot of these players don't want this happening in the background while they're playing. As I mentioned, even with Logan Cooley, even as he was on the verge of signing his contract, I do think it had an impact on the very start of his season this year. That's going to be a blip in the long scope of time, because he's already picked his play back up and he's got this deal now. But, I think it can be a distraction. So, with RFAs, there isn't necessarily a rush to get things done, but it's pretty clear this is all headed in a positive direction for those guys, especially, Bedard's had a great start to the season in Chicago. And I don't think there's any reason to doubt that he would, but he took some lumps, I think, publicly there's a lot of expectations on him, and deservedly so, with the World Junior records he set and the way he lit the WHL on fire. But, he joined a pretty poor Chicago team for 2 seasons and maybe didn't pop to the way some would have expected. But, I still think there's a lot of greatness within him, and you're starting to see even more of that this year, and the Blackhawks are playing better too, which helps.
Watching him against the Senators the other night, gets his first career hat trick, just absolutely electric on the ice. It's funny because, we spent the last few months, or a lot of people I think have, wondering about chances of a guy like Bedard Celebrini making it onto Team Canada for the upcoming Olympics. And it's kind of like we forgot about like Connor Bedard's chances, like another good young player who could make some noise. Now with both of those players off to really good starts, like it's really cool to measure both of those two chances. At least I think it is for me. Like, how do you see it?
Well, they definitely are both put themselves in the conversation, which is all you can do if you're that young, right? And Bedard and Celebrini were by far the youngest players invited to the orientation camp in the summer. And it was made very clear to them at that time, you do have a shot. Like, we're not gonna hold anyone out just because we think they're too young, or they're not putting a roadblock up. But what really matters is they will be judged very, very closely on how they perform in this season. And so I'm guessing if you're those guys, you took that away from that, and they've put a lot of emphasis on being ready to go this year. And they both out of the gates have been fantastic. I mean, as we're recording this, Celebrini's second among Canadian-born players with 17 points. Bedard is 7th. I mean, they're right there, outperforming numerous, players that have already been named to the team in terms of just pure points. And obviously a lot more goes into the decisions than just taking the scoring leaders. But they have outperformed players that are already named to this team. They've outperformed players that were on the Four Nations team. They're doing what they need to do. But I'm going to put one thing in your mind, Julian.
Sure.
And my understanding is it's not even a guarantee either of them makes it, but I think it's an incredible long shot that both of them make it. And there's lots of reasons for that. I mean, 5 forwards have already been named as part of the initial 6 players. So there's only 9 jobs available. Team Canada is also thinking of, guys that can kill penalties or guys that, can play certain roles. A lot of making the top 6 of a Team Canada is almost impossible, quite frankly. I mean, if there's one thing Canada continues to do well is produce high-end forwards, centers in particular, more centers than our spots on the roster. So a lot of, players that play center in the NHL get pushed over when they get into the national team environment. And so, for Bedard and Celebrini, I don't think there's 2 jobs there for them to earn. Look, we can already jump ahead to 2030. These guys are going to be teammates at the Olympics. That's one's in the French Riviera, I think, or something. I can't remember what they're calling that.
Oh my God.
The
2030.
I think it's in like Nice, France. Anyway.
Yeah. The French Alps.
French Alps, pardon me. So, location aside, I think it's safe to assume that those guys will be teammates then. I'm not sure there will be two spots for them and to be one in 2026. So I'm not saying they're going exactly head to head. That's the way the media might want to bill it. I don't think it's that simple for the people making the decisions, but it's going to be interesting to watch because, Celebrini in particular, like he goes to the Worlds last year, clearly clicks with Crosby. He's really popped to start the season. But as you mentioned, like Bedard had the hat trick the other night. Like, I think until we get to December 31st, which is the absolute deadline, we're only 2 months away from that point when the team will be selected. These guys, they're competitors. They're going to want to outperform each other. And so anyway, it's great for Canada, quite honestly, to have players like this, to have this debate. But, I think that the management is looking at what they expect the Olympics to be. They think it's going to be a man's game. Like they think it's going to be, they're definitely going to put a stone in the experience pile. Like they're going to look and you consider, like, I can't remember the exact number from 4 Nations. Was it 14 players, I think, on that roster had won a cup? Anyway, Canada has not only a tremendous amount of good players, like they have players that have played the absolute biggest games possible, been huge performers. It's going to be hard for these guys to knock one of those guys out. This is just the second season for Celebrini with the Sharks, right? And the Sharks were a bottom feeder last year. It's only the 3rd season for Bedard, and the Blackhawks have been a lottery team most of his years in the league. These guys just haven't played on the stage that so many of those will be judged against have. And so we don't yet know exactly how those decisions are going to come up. I will say the management team for Team Canada is due to meet here in early November. So, I think we'll probably get a little better idea of where the toughest decisions are coming. But, in the meantime, let's not get lost in anything negative and really accentuate the fact that 2 young guys that were brought to that summer camp, I think a lot of it with 2030 in mind, they both are at least keeping the window open where they got a chance to be Olympians in 2026. Celebrini's 19, bud. And the youngest NHLer, I believe, that Team Canada's brought in all the era that they've ever brought, NHL players, the previous games, was Drew Doughty. Was 20 in Vancouver, 2010. So, there's a chance if Celebrini were to be picked, he'd be the youngest NHL player in the best on best kind of era to represent Canada at the Olympics. I mean, Connor Bedard is elderly at 20. He's a year older, but either way, they're trying to do something that's hard to do. Make a team that I think experience does count for the decision makers, but keep playing well, and you never know, because I know that the Team Canada management staff is scouting a ton of games right now, and they're obviously watching those 2 guys closely.
I know it might not be directly Celebrini versus Bedard, but I really, really love the idea of those 2 being quote unquote pitted against each other for a spot, and just we spend the next few months just watching what one does in Chicago and the other does in San Jose as just a marketing, like just an appeal thing for the league. I just think that's such a cool thing to look at. Again, I understand it might not be directly that, but I'm gripped at the idea at those 2 guys competing for a spot on Team Canada. I love that idea.
Well, I'll give you one other battle to consider. You got Mark Scheifele and Nick Suzuki. who were two of the best players not invited to the Four Nations, both off to outrageously good starts in Winnipeg and Montreal, respectively. Two teams that have gotten off to a great start to start this season. I don't know if there's going to be room for both of them. This is the trouble in a sense. This is where it gets complicated. Some hearts are going to be broken here. And I realize it's not as glitzy as mentioning the two up and coming superstars in the league. But there's not enough roster spots to go around. And so, if you look at the top 10 Canadian scorers at this moment, it includes those four players I just mentioned. It includes John Tavares. You might surprise you because you cover the guy. Drake Batherson is currently in 10th.
He's been good to start the year.
In Canadian players. And I mean this with no disrespect to Drake, but I don't hear his name in any of these debates. But the point is Canada's going to leave off likely a bunch of players that are playing great, that have produced well. And some of it is we're judging this conversation or some of the parameters on point production. The truth is the top six jobs. I mean, you've already got McDavid, McKinnon, Point, Reinhart on the team, and Crosby. Oh, don't forget about him.
Don't forget about him.
Maybe there's a world, some of those, it's possible one of those guys are more our third line. Depends if you play Point down the middle or not. We'll see what John Cooper ends up doing. But, you've kind of got 5 of 6 or 4 of 6 top 6 jobs spoken for already. Those guys are already on the team. So there's only so many roles when we're talking about, offensive productive players to fit into. But I think there is value if one of these young guys keeps this up. I think there's value in introducing that player to the team. I mean, we'll see what they end up doing. There's a roster spot on this team where the forward doesn't even play in the games, right? There's a 14th spot. Maybe that's how they elect to go with it. I mean, I don't want to get too far out of myself. Let's let them do their work. Right now, everyone's just watching and taking notes, and they're going to start zeroing in on those decisions in the next month or so.
I'm telling you, it's going to happen. CJ picks Team Canada. We're going to have that episode on CJ show. It's going to happen.
We're just not ready yet.
Wait. We're not ready yet. I'm not trying to rush you, but it's definitely going to happen. I want to look at the standings. We've done this in the last few episodes, taking a quick peek at teams that have started well or disappointed. I want to stick on the positives as we enter a new month. I can't believe we're at November already. I know we're recording on Halloween.
It's getting real, though. You get to November, it's no longer early. You know what I mean? You remember how we were qualifying everything as early in the last few shows?
Sure did.
We're shifting out of early in the NHL season.
It's getting real late out here. But for teams like Detroit, Utah, Pittsburgh, I can't believe Pittsburgh is off to this great start. They're 8-2-2. They were supposed to be buried. They were supposed to be first in line for the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes. And through Crosby, Malkin, all the old guys up front, Letang, they're doing it. I'd love to know your thoughts on some of these teams that have surprised to start the year. Chicago, Montreal, Seattle, you can even put them as well. But let's spend some time on Pittsburgh for a minute, because this start is incredible.
Yeah, and look, a lot has gone their way. And I'm not here dogging on them, but this team has a hot power play. It's had good goaltending. It's even probably had some shooting luck. So it's not to say that we aren't seeing the start of what could still become a special season, but I think that they're a long way from being able to sustain this over a long period of time. But credit where it's due. I mean, you win the games you play. We don't grade too many victories. I think over time you're looking though at trends. And so I still don't think this is the Penguins, but I mean, is that even a hot take? I'm pretty sure we had them, or I had them, or whatever we did that, but I'm pretty sure we had them last in the Metro in our prediction show.
Oh yeah.
And here they are at the top of the league. So, I mean, to say that they're probably not going to stay there is, I guess, a little bit obvious, but some things have gone their way. Malkin's start has been unbelievable. This guy's supposed to be in his last season, and look how productive he's been. I mean, Sidney Crosby, ho-hum, just another, 1.3 points per game, just going to keep doing that for infinity, it appears, even though everybody else ages and sees some decline. Sid's still clicking. I think what's exciting for the people in Pittsburgh is they've introduced some young players to the team, right? And some newcomers too. They've made some bets on the Witherspoons or the Brazos, and those guys have played pretty well. But, they have Ben Kindle there, second youngest player in the entire league, scored a goal in Minnesota on Thursday. You got Harrison Brunicki. I should say his name better. Anyway.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
I think it's Brunicki. I would have said Brunicki. But
another teenager. Like the fact they're bringing younger guys into the fold, maybe getting a little bit of juice out of that. It's a great news story. There's nothing bad to be said. I would caution a little bit to say that the Penguins now are suddenly buyers and they're going to, they got a chance to win another cup. I don't think we're quite at that level, but let's let them keep playing and see if they can sustain it to some level. The team I'm probably I should say two. Detroit is another team we should properly shout out. Now it looks like there's a little bit of potentially a lot of things going right there that won't necessarily keep themselves going, but you can't ignore the results at a certain point with them. The Red Wings they found something. You see this Emmett Finney, a 7th round pick.
Max Boltman wrote a really great story about him for The Athletic, and I encourage you all to check that out. What a story.
Yeah, and crazy story to be a 7th round pick in 2023 and be in the NHL already, let alone be on a top line. Now, if you look at that top line, there's a little bit of puck luck going on with that Red Wings top line. And so, I don't want to get too carried away in small sample sizes, but either way, this guy's beat the odds to be where he is. And, they had a lineup hole there. They looked at the left side of their first line and weren't sure what to do. And he's been the answer in the short term. And that team, Emmett Finney aside, looks like they're certainly turning a corner and maybe in a position finally to do what Montreal and Ottawa did in that division prior to that. The people that have been listening the last few weeks are 100%ers know. I'm highest on Utah. Of all the hot starts, I think that's the one that I look at as okay, that team is actually really taking the step. And well positioned, I think, to be aggressive when it comes to maybe adding a player or two as the season goes along. And, they have the weight they got everything, all the wins at their back, right? They've signed their young star player, as we talked about. They've got an owner who is all in committed to helping it happen. They've opened a new practice rink. They've got all the facilities that they lacked as an organization. And keep in mind, there's a lot of players and staff there that were working in Arizona, that had to endure. They've seen the bad side of what the NHL can be in terms of just, where you work and how you're treated and all those things, which I think can matter. And now they're getting the other side of it. They've got an excited fan base. They've even got a name. They've got a mascot who their record is some absurd number with
Tusky
since Tusky's been around. Everything's going Utah's way, but I think that to me, of the great early stories in the season, that's the one that I think is the most real. That's the stock I would be most inclined to kind of say I'd hitch my wagon to. But look, the Penguins, Detroit, it feels like, I'll say this, it feels like the bottom of the league is kind of turning over.
Yep.
And, it's just gravity, man. As teams go up, some teams got to come down. And I don't know if that's, if you're in Toronto or Edmonton today and you're a Leafs and Oilers fan, you're not feeling great about those starts. Both teams are skidding around 500. Certainly not letting the world on fire. I'm not saying those teams are tumbling down to the bottom of the standings, nothing like that. But, as those rise and claim more points, there's fewer points for everyone else to scrounge for. And so we're going to see, I think somebody and probably a couple teams that expect to be good this year are just not going to be good. That's kind of my conclusion. And that's what we're kind of watching play out, because for all the other things that get people excited, Julian, when we're talking about trades and player movement, I think that has to start to sort itself out before you really see meaningful trades made. Is certain teams have to decide they're selling, attractive players in the marketplace. And I just don't think we're there yet. Even with a team like Calgary, who's obviously floating around at the bottom, and I think we'll get there. I don't sense that they're there on Halloween afternoon. It's going to take a few more weeks before anyone's making those kind of calls.
A lot to unpack, but there's one person I want to mention that I didn't mention through the Pittsburgh Penguins. Have you seen Tristan Jarry's stat line on this Penguins team right now? 5-1, 5-1-0, and a save percentage of .923 and a goals against average of .235. This guy was playing in the minors last year and his GAA in the NHL ballooned up to over 3. People were wondering what was next for Tristan Jarry, and it can't. I just wanted his name mentioned because just with all those guys up front who are doing well for Pittsburgh, he's turning into a very early story to focus on in Pittsburgh. That's a great start for him.
Yeah, and he was in the minors making $5+ million, right? Like, which I mean, good to be making that money, not be paying escrow, but the bat not where you're supposed to be. And frankly, sometimes the next step for a player in that position is to be out of the league entirely. But so good for Jarry for battling his way back. I mean, again, that's a big part of Pittsburgh's success is the goaltending, the hot power play, a little bit of shooting luck going on. I mean, they're due for some regression. I guess the question is, how sharp is it? Are there other moves they can make? I mean, I think the Penguins are a team that's still in the market, looking for younger players that can upgrade, where they're at. Yeah, I don't think anyone there is losing sight of the bigger picture of what they're trying to do. But this is, it's a nice start and it's a flip on the story, right? Because we're not talking about who contemplating what or anything like that. I'm not even going to say it today because they've earned the respect not to have that then become a topic. Because we know as long as the Penguins are where they are, everybody that's been there for a long time is going to want to stay.
I love that we're avoiding that. You mentioned the Leafs very briefly. How thankful are they about this World Series run for the Jays? Because this is the quietest I've ever heard Leafs fans, general Toronto hockey media on this team performing as weekly as they've been. Look, they have a 500 record as we're talking, but considering the expectations surrounding this team, they should be way better than where they're at. But because of the fact we've been focusing on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and so many other guys on the Toronto Blue Jays, that same fire, Steve Dangle notwithstanding, just hasn't been there around this team for a start like this.
No. I mean, they got their lunch handed to them in Columbus this week, and nobody noticed because Trey Savage was mowing through the Dodgers at the exact same time, right? So I think the Leafs, in short, are very grateful for something approaching peace and quiet in their marketplace, a little bit of time to work through their issues. And I don't know personally where I land on this group yet. I mean, nobody can like what they've sort of where the output has been so far. But at the same time, much like the Oilers, I mentioned earlier, they have been kind of sluggish starters in a lot of seasons and yet, end up, winning the Atlantic Division last year in the regular season. And despite a sluggish start, a very similar start in terms of the numbers, even in terms of some of the underlying numbers to what they have today. But, just because that's happened in the past doesn't mean they're going to flip the switch. It's just, I think that they get a little bit of benefit of the doubt by that. And they get a lot of cover by the fact that most people aren't watching as closely and picking through every little decision or all the lineup changes or the fact that, that they played a top line game with Bobby McMahon and Nick Robertson on Austin Matthews' wings. I mean, some people are noticing Austin's, goal production certainly is well down. And I think that there's some frustration mounting there from his perspective. I mean, obviously he's used to putting the puck in the net. It's not going his way right now. And he's fighting through it a little bit. And I'm sure some of it is, and I'm not putting it on Robertson or McMahon specifically or anyone else he skated with this year. Some of it is probably the line. Like he hasn't found a line yet, right? He's played most of the season until a week or so ago with Matthew Nyes, who's kind of struggled a little bit. I know he's put up some points, but within the games, maybe not as effective as he'd like. I mean, look, there's just a lot that isn't quite there yet for the Leafs. Their goaltending isn't where it's been. Last year certainly was a huge strength of the team. Their power play is off to a very poor start. I will say though, internally, I don't get the sense anyone is. There's no alarms going off yet. I'll put it that way at 50 Bay Street, which is where they play or where their offices are based. I mean, I think that they've seen some internal process related things that they think are going in the right direction. They're banking on obviously Austin Matthews looking more like Austin Matthews. They're hoping, with Joseph Woll now back with the team, that the goaltending is going to come around, that he'll be back in a position where Anthony Stolarz maybe isn't being played as much. Scott Lawton even is set to rejoin the lineup, which I know it's not like the world changes necessarily, but like they're trending in a direction where they should be more like the team they thought they had in the summer. But it's been rough. And the only positive you can say about it is it hasn't been as well documented as we'd say most Octobers would be around here, because people have been focused on some other things.
That will change if the Leafs turn things around, but also if they don't, Monday's episode, if they have a bad weekend, they're going to be top of mind for us.
We need to see. We still need to see with this team, like, have they made the right decisions, right? Like they've leaned. It's
a good question.
They've leaned into grit, right? If you look at the roster moves and the offseason acquisitions, I mean, Matthias Michelli aside, who was brought in a trade from Utah, they've gone in a certain direction that it's not yet clear. Is it going to pay off with the Nicholas Waz and Dakota Joshua's? Like, are they going to score enough? That those questions have yet to be answered. They're certainly not defensively. They're not anywhere near the level that they expect to be. So, I don't know how long the rope is, Julian, but it's only a couple more weeks until I think some reactions have to start. I can understand how they want to ride this out a little bit longer internally and take a look, and like they want to trust in what they've built, but it's still a TBD whether they've put themselves in positions to be better off, and certainly nothing in the first month tells you that that's the case.
For those wondering, American Thanksgiving, which a lot of teams use as a marker for determining whether or not teams are for real or not, November 27th. So
is that late?
27. I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
Feels late.
I'm not sure. It does feel. Wikipedia says the earliest Thanksgiving can occur is November 22nd, and the latest is November 28th. So it is late.
It's late, but that means that the NHL teams have less than 4 weeks till then. And it always seems to be this mythical date. I actually don't know. I think that's somewhat become a crutch for media or fans to like focus on as compared to being an actual real date. But what it does tell you, we'll suspend belief for today and say that's a real date when everyone's got to decide whether they're good or not. You've only got less than 4 weeks. That's what I'm saying. We're no longer early, my friend. We've shifted out of early into like, I don't know what comes after early, because we're not late.
On time.
What's the next shade of? I don't know. Yeah.
So you have early, on time.
But I'm thinking like we're not early in the season. We're kind of like
the party hasn't started.
We're settling in. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know how you are about parties. Are you a person that likes to get to a party if it's at 7:00? You're getting there at 7:00.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I don't do fashionably late. I have anxiety about being late in general. Like if you and I were going to meet for lunch at noon, I'm there at 11:45 probably, or 11:50.
Okay. So like the parties you go to where you're there at that time, are people already there, or do you have to like help people set up at that point?
I think we've opened the first drink on this season. Like I think it's like the setup is done, and when we're not into the party hasn't full swing, but we're like, all right, we've popped a couple corks and we're ready to get this thing started.
You and I have very much different styles of partying.
Yeah.
Because for me, like these parties that start at 7, that means I'm going there at 9. If you're going there at 7, then people are still setting up food. Chairs still have to get set up. Like we have very different partying experiences.
It actually doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that about you, but it's not surprising to learn that.
And like, that's not just like me, but just like the family gatherings that I've gone to, like, that's just what it is. It's like, all right, 7:00. That's when everyone's supposed to be there. We're going to be there at like 8. If we get there any earlier, we're going to help set up, which is not a problem. It just is what it is. But anyway, that's why I was asking that question.
Right.
Anyway, I have one final thing before we get to stick taps here. Just because people have been talking about it throughout much of this week, the Frozen Frenzy, which ESPN does every year, where they have every single team in the NHL plays. They have these staggered starts where games start every couple of minutes. They had it on Tuesday this week on ESPN, where fine in Canada, maybe we don't get to benefit from that. But if you have ESPN in the States, you should be able to watch it. Saw a lot more people complaining about it before and after. Not so much during, but definitely at those two times. What were your thoughts on Frozen Frenzy, and what do you think of that concept of all these teams playing and games starting a couple minutes after the other?
I like it. I am not as down on it as everyone else. I feel like the league took a lot of daggers over it this week. Now, I will acknowledge, not great to have it on a World Series night. Not all teams love it, because they stagger the starts, so some sort of quirky start times. But I think the league is wise to do it. And I'll say this, I think that next year you'll see it again, and probably later in the season, so it doesn't conflict with other sports events, and maybe on a weekend instead of a Tuesday, because on a weekend it opens up, it opens up some opportunities. Sorry, I'm just a piece of news coming across my thing here.
Whoa!
I can't share it yet here.
Okay, is it something we have to get the breaking news going?
I don't know if it's going to come in time for this pod, but.
Okay. All right. This is one of my favorite things about doing this podcast, when news is like on the cusp of being broken. Because I was wondering about that when I was doing the intro for this segment. You look distracted. I was trying to buy you some time.
Maybe we should just call the pod here. I think we've had a long show, and I might need to make a couple calls.
Okay. All right. If you got to do that.
Long story short, I don't see anything wrong with playing every team every day. They can maybe execute it a little better, which I think they'll do next season. But I realize everyone was all fired up about this week's thing.
Okay, we'll move stick taps to next week. Get your questions in now for Ask CJ. Looks like there's a big piece of news we might miss, but it looks like we'll be able to talk about it on Monday if it's pretty big.
I don't know how big it is, and I don't know if it's happening.
Okay. All right, but we got to call it here. CJ, great work as always. Thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed to the pod, and we'll talk to you all next week. Peace.
Peace, brother.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.